that was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I
Thank you.
cannot wait to share this with the world. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Dope as L, where we dive into really great stories with empowered women. And today we are talking with an amazing woman who I just have so much love for and gives me so much fuel from a feminine perspective. I'm talking today with Nui Louise. Hi Nui, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you for having me. It was so sweet.
Nui is a women's intuitive guide. She is the owner and founder of the TP in New South Wales. That's right, we're talking all the way across the globe from where I'm at in Chicago. And she does oracle card readings, she does mentoring, she is starting a menstruation masterclass. We are going to get into all of this stuff. Nui, thank you for being here. Tell me, how did you get started in all of this? This wasn't even a world that I was even aware existed until I met you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I feel like my whole life has been leading up to this point. And so it's kind of funny because with the menstruation stuff, I picked up a book at the start of the year. So I've been tracking my cycle for a few years now and looking at the correlations with the moon and the seasons and really getting to know my womb space and myself. And I picked up a book at the start of the year, and it just triggered something inside me. And I was like, no, I'm not, like, this is not what I'm here to do. You know, I'm not qualified for this. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, no. So I kept kind of like pushing it away, but it just keeps coming back. And so I finally surrendered to it. And in doing so, I've just been accelerated on this path of like all of the beautiful teachings that I'm here to spread. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know when it started. I feel like it's been a conspiracy of the cosmos for a long time. Yeah,
So you haven't been doing this that long, but you've been tracking your cycle for a long time, which is, I think, something that a lot of women may or may not do.
yeah.
What's the importance of tracking your cycle?
Well, a lot of women track their cycle because they want to know when they're going to bleed. And from the societal norms of things, we want to know when we're going to bleed so that we can prepare for it. Or if you're on the pill, I mean, like I know a lot of times in my younger life, I would skip my period a lot. You know what I mean? Because if I had an event going on, and now knowing what I know now, it's like I was actually missing out on a really vital part of my existence here, and the opportunity to get to know myself a little bit better. So when we track our period, a lot of women think that it's your menstrual cycle is just when you bleed, but it's not. It's the whole from the start of your bleed to the start of your bleed again. Just like from new moon to new moon is the moon cycle. That's your whole cycle. So it varies for every woman, but when you track your cycle on the holistic level of it all, looking at it from start to finish and then start again, that's when you see like a bigger picture and you travel through all the different phases rather than just focusing on when you're going to bleed and then when you're not bleeding. You know, that's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how we've been taught, is like you're either bleeding or you're not, and that's it. We all know about ovulation, but that's about it, you know, and PMS, which has quite a bad name for itself. So yeah, and I know a lot of women track their cycle. And so I'd been tracking mine for a few years, like I said, but I'd read in a book by Rebecca Campbell something about the moon a few years ago and your cycle, and it really intrigued me. And all of a sudden it was like everything just made sense. So from then I just kind of started my own journey of really sinking in every time I would feel a shift in my energy, every time I would have a painful period, or every time that something, you know, I would be PMS phase of my cycle and I would be super like, you know, angry and fiery. I would start to look at where I'm at in my cycle and what could it possibly be telling me on an energetic, emotional level. So yeah, it's been this wild ride.
Yeah, talk more about that energetic emotional level. How does that fit in? I mean, you're talking about, your moon cycles and maybe like the anger or, frustration associated with PMS, or how does this all fit together in the bigger scheme of things for ourselves?
So our emotions are energy in motion. And so when we connect to our emotional map, which for me is held within our menstrual cycle, because we go through 4 specific phases throughout the month, throughout our cycle. And so when you look on that at that from an energetic level, you start to realize that's why, um, at ovulation time, we're usually more energetic and we're ready to get life. That's very common, oh, she must be ovulating, because look at her, she's shiny, and then coming down from that, you crash down into PMS, like premenstruation, and then it's like, oh, she's PMSing, so it's kind of like something that we've observed, but not on the emotional, energetic level for a long time. And so for me, instead of looking at it as like, okay, I'm in this part of my cycle, it was like, this is my emotional map. Because after about 3 months of really tapping into myself, I started to notice that there were very specific phases where I felt a certain way, and then I would feel a different way, and that's why we can say 1 week we feel amazing and the next we feel like crap. And that's because we are cyclic. The planet is a perfect example of an energetic cycle, from summer to fall to winter to spring, and it goes around like that. And we can't constantly be going when we have to pause. Winter is a time of pause, and that's our bleed time. So on the energetic and emotional level, it's a very personal experience for each individual. I could tell you everything about my cycle, and it may be totally different to the way that you experience yours, because we've got to take into account our upbringings and stuff like that, and how we express our emotions in the first place. If you're not a very expressive emotional person, then it may be a very different journey to you as it would be for me, who's quite emotional. I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to get angry. But what I know now is that when those feelings come up, I can check in and see, where am I at, and what is this trying to tell me? What is out of alignment? And I think that's the beauty of the energetic emotional connection of it all, is that when we're in that PMS phase and we're super angry and we want to just escape from the world, that's because something is out of alignment. Something needs to go. And so that anger arises in order for us to signal that you're about to bleed. So energetically, you can let this go. So I'm going to bring it up now for you to feel, and then let it go. So the trick there is to not stay in it, Don't stay in the emotion for too long.
Yeah. And I think too, for example, like when I'm feeling that anger of PMS and I recognize that that's what's going on, it's easy for me to kind of dismiss it rather than feeling into that emotion of, it's okay to be angry. But how do you maybe tap into that energy more rather than just being like, oh, I'm just PMSing?
Okay, so for me now, it's a lot different to when I first started this, because I would get really angry, and then I used to be quite an angry person. So my outbursts would be quite intense sometimes. And so what I would find is that when it was arising originally, I would just kind of sit with it and take the seat of the observer in situations like that, because I didn't know what to do. And that's the thing, is like when we're so used to being angry and expressing ourselves like that, when you realize, oh, I don't want to be angry anymore, you actually have to stop and observe yourself in those moments in order to change it. So I found myself observing a lot, and then I would ask, well, what would I want to do instead? And so for me in my PMS phase, now when I switch over, I feel it. It's a very, because I call it wild woman phase. So we'll refer to it as that because that's when our wild woman comes out to play, right? She's the fearless part of us. So whenever I feel my wild woman energy kick in, because I'm quite connected to that, that's when I actually, it comes through mostly in song because I like to sing a lot when I'm in that phase, interestingly enough. So when I start to notice that I'm really singing a lot and dancing a lot, I go, okay, this is where I'm at, you know, and that's how I shift it. If I feel in that part of my cycle, if I start to see, you know, the imbalances in the world, and I start to feel like, you know, the anger of you know, the politics that are going on and all of that kind of stuff, I kind of sink in and kind of ask, how can I use this as fuel? Because staying focused on the external happenings of what is going on in our world, instead of asking what can I do in my immediate, you know, reality to create change, because a lot of people don't go on the path of creating change because they think, well, who am I? You know, what can I do? I'm only just, you know, I live in a small town and blah, 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 blah. But it's when you sink into your ability to take that anger and turn it into passion, and then use it as fuel to get out in the world and be the vessel for change. And so when my PMS phase comes along, when my wild woman comes out to play, I nourish her through dance and song and baths and catching up with friends. And it's funny because before I had gone on this journey, you would never catch me catching up with people in that phase because everything would annoy me, right? So anyone saying anything would annoy me. So I would just avoid it. I was just like a walking itchy ball, you know, very irritable. And so now that I know that, I really like to get out and meet new people in that phase, because the conversations that you can create and actually lean into learning more about and feeling more about your path and your passion is where I find in my wild woman phase. So that's my experience with it. You know, a lot of women don't like that part of their cycle. They're more pre-ovulation and ovulation, and that's why it's really important that we look at it on an energetic level, on a big view, and not be kind of like, okay, this is how you're going to feel, this is how you're going to feel, this is how you're going to feel. It's like, how do you feel? You know, consciously connecting with our womb space and our energy throughout the month is the only way that we can really get there. There's no fast track to all of this. It's really getting to know yourself on the inside. So
what's the best way to do that, or what has worked for you or some of the people that you've worked with?
Okay, so so that's why I created the menstruation masterclass, because I find that everyone is so individual, and like I said, we all experience our emotions differently, we all experience our body differently, and our connection to our menstrual cycle. So, you know, someone who has been very disconnected and they've had like endometriosis or anything like that may be very disconnected from that part, and so the journey for them will be so different to me. So I created the menstruation masterclass so that I could put together every single aspect that I found was important and created exercises for, like, say if you were taking it, for you to take, and you could do the exercises yourself, so you get to design your own energetic map. I don't tell you what to do. I show you what I have done and what I think has played a role, and then it's up to you to decide. And along with that is just so many tools for you to open up your intuition, to meet your maiden, mother, wild woman, crone, journaling exercises, all of those types of things, because that's how I've done it. It's been a few years looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I done this and I done this and I done this, and it was very, very helpful. And so my advice would be consciously doing it for a 3-month cycle. And I'm not saying it doesn't have to be like this big, like, all right, got to check in every day. It's just actually taking note of where you are in your cycle and how you're feeling, basically, and looking at all of those things that I've laid out to go, okay, well, yeah, this, you know, I like spring, I like pre-ovulation. That's my, you know, that's my yes time, because you'll find that you'll get power phases where you feel your intuition is heightened. That happens mostly for all women who really sink in when they bleed. Our intuition is so heightened. Our senses are so heightened. And when we numb it out and we ignore that we're going through that and we don't take the time to sink in, the guidance that we are so, we're always asking for guidance. Give me a sign, show me the way, well, you know what I mean? But when we don't stop in that important part of our cycle to actually surrender to it, the guidance is kind of just, it's like tapping on you. Come on, I'm trying to get through, So your power phase, some women may have a power phase that's pre-ovulation. Some may have it wild woman. But it may change as well. For me, I've noticed that it changes, sometimes, and that also correlates with the moon and where we're at with the seasons and all of those types of things. So it's one of those things. It's like, there's many aspects, but it's all about how it feels to you. It's not a one size fits all at all, because right. I mean, we're two different bodies.
Right.
A million bodies. We can't. Yeah.
So for women, you mentioned like endometriosis, for women who aren't maybe having what we might categorize as a typical cycle, or maybe they're, headed into the end of their cycle, or even like young girls who are just starting and things aren't a typical 28-day, whatever it is. How do you find that do these cycles that you're talking about still play a role?
Well, when it comes to endometriosis and things like that, that's not really my field. I like to talk about the energetics, but I'm a huge believer in our body showing us signs of dis-ease within our emotional, spiritual, physical body. And so I'm a huge believer in Louise Hay's work of how our thoughts create this kind of imbalance. So when it comes to endometriosis and things like that, I would be seeking not only professional medical advice, but also professional spiritual advice as to finding out why that would be manifesting in your womb space. I truly believe that it's the huge disconnection that women have experienced from their bodies and their cycle and just their womb in general over the last few hundred to thousand years. But like I said, that's not my forte. But when we talk about maidens that are just coming into bleeding, and we're talking about women who are just finishing bleeding, the beautiful thing about the planet that we live on is that it is a mirror. So the planet and its seasons are a mirror of our cyclic nature. The moon is a mirror of our cyclic nature. So especially for women who are finishing their bleed time and they're going into moon pause, it's a lot of women think, oh, this isn't important to me, this doesn't, and it absolutely is, because you're still cycling with the moon. It's still you're still an energetic, as long as your body is living on this planet, you are a part of the cyclic nature of this planet. And the moon is like, it's powerful. It pulls the tides every month. We are 80% water, and the moon pulls the way. Of course it's going to have an effect on us. So I would be suggesting that Crones look to the moon and to the seasons, and really to themselves, to what that means for them. Because this is the most beautiful thing about when you start to reconnect with your menstrual cycle, you realize how much you know for yourself about yourself. Your intuition is heightened, and you get to know yourself on such a deep level that nobody can really waver you from the truth of who you are. And that's why I truly love the fact that this is being birthed through me, because maidens, I feel like if maidens can get a hold of this knowledge when they start bleeding for the first time, it will really change the way that they not only connect with their own body, but they connect in their relationships with people and with men, and that knowing that their body is like a sacred, cyclic, intuitive vessel. you know, and that underneath that, this human body and this human experience is this unwavering guidance. And the best way for a young maiden to get in contact with that is through her menstrual cycle. So when it comes to that, I would love to see every maiden have this knowledge. It would create so much healing for all the women that came before them, and it will also prevent a whole lot of pain. Because a lot of the time in our maidenhood, we cling to external people, places, and things for guidance. You know, we start to follow the pack. We look at boys to give us pleasure, because we aren't taught that. You know, we aren't taught that, hey, there's a part in your cycle that maybe you want to play with yourself a little bit more. You want to play with life a little bit more. You don't need to go and seek that from anyone externally. So I feel like this maidens is really where the change is at, so that we don't get to, like, you know, I'm 31 and I look back now and I'm healing my maiden a lot. And I'm like, had I known all of this, although I believe it's all perfect, but had I known all of this back then, my life would have been totally different, you know, and a lot of the pain that I experienced would have been non-existent. But it's all perfect, so on the path.
Yes, on the path. You have to take that journey, right, to get there. You've mentioned a couple of terms kind of interchangeably, like maiden and crone. Wild woman is a phase, but so are the other two, right? Those are kind of phases of the cycle as well.
Yeah, so maiden is pre-ovulation, first quarter moon, spring, and yeah, she's the young, vibrant part of you, you know. Then there's the mother phase, which is ovulation, summer, full moon, like fullness, you know. Then you've got the wild woman, which is premenstruation or PMS. She is last quarter moon. She is fall, which the thing I love about autumn is, like, it's just such a beautiful reminder, and you guys are in the north are experiencing that now, right? Mm-hmm. It's such a beautiful reminder to let go. And that's what I feel is, like, with the wild woman, she's just wanting you to pay attention to all the things that need to be let go of, like let go of the stronghold that we try to have on life, and just allow it to just fall away, knowing that it will return. You know, it will return. The trees never they don't freak out and hold on to their leaves. Going, oh, my leaves aren't going to return, you know, because that's the beautiful mirror that the planet is that, like, yeah, let it go and it will grow back. And then we've got the crone, which is new moon, dark moon, bleed time, winter, you know, that inwardness. And the crone is the woman who has been through her whole cycle, and now she no longer bleeds, but she still cycles with the planet, and now she holds the knowledge, she holds the wisdom of all of the cycles that she has been through before. And that's why really reconnecting with that part of our cycle will actually reconnect us with the wise women of our community. You know, older women have had such a bad rap for so long. I mean, we've grown up in a society that teaches us to dye our grey hair from the moment we get our first grey hair, because that's seen as, like, you know, it's aging, it's old, it's not good, basically. And that's a bullshit lie, because that is a sign that we are growing wiser. And so when we can reconnect with our bleed cycle, we can actually reconnect with that on the energetic level of all of those wise women who never had a chance to share their voice and their wisdom or their recipes. Or, you know, a lot of the time everyone just ignores grandma because she's annoying, but grandma actually holds the golden nuggets, you know, to life. She's got the experience and sometimes the best recipes. So we've got to listen to and we've got to listen to our bleed. You know, it's like a great correlation there.
Definitely. Oh, Nui, what I really admire about you is the feminine power that you seem to embody in such a phenomenal way. I think this society has put so much, you know, masculine power onto all of us that whether we like it or not, we often grab onto it and, you know, push forward. We lean in, we do all of these things. And something that I've really admired about you is that you you have this ability to seem to like go with the flow a little bit better than a lot of people that I know. How did you find that part of you? Have you always kind of been like that, or was it I had to really lean into this myself over time and like learn to let go like the fall?
Yeah, look, I have not always been like this. Like I mentioned earlier, I used to be quite an angry person, and I beat myself up for a lot of years for the choices that I had made. You know, in my younger teenage, in my maiden years, I grew up way too fast, and I got into serious relationships way too young. And when I kind of came up for air, I was 23 years old, and I'd been drinking a lot for about 5 years, and I had been through serious relationships. And I remember one day I'd just gotten out of another relationship, and I thought, and this is probably the first moment that I really connected with the power of my willingness to change my reality. This is the first kind of experience that I had, and what an internal shift feels like. So I'd just broken up with another partner, and you know, the whole relationship was really because I was lonely, and that's probably one of the worst things you could ever do is to be with someone because you're lonely. And he was a good friend of mine and my brother's, and it was, yeah, I was really kind of sad with myself for doing that, because I knew that I shouldn't have been doing it. And I remember sitting there one day and I said to myself, I am not going to be with anyone else until I love myself completely, until I feel what it is to accept myself as I am and not go grasping for people because I'm lonely, or because I need affection, or because and so I remember that day clear as day. And oddly enough, I actually met my current husband 2 weeks later. And I remember saying like, no, we're not we're just going to be friends. And I was adamant with the friends thing for 3 months, even though we were spending every single day and every single night together. I was like, no, we're going to be friends, because that's what I promised myself, is that I was going to love myself and not need anyone else. And then, 2 weeks later, he came along. And looking back now, I'm like, I remember that day. I remember how something inside me shifted. And I remember I actually meant what I said. It wasn't something that I just said. I actually meant it, probably for the first time in my whole life. Did I mean that I wanted to be alone, And so from then, and now meeting my husband now, and just the amazing person that he is, and we are forever growing together and loving each other. I can always look at our relationship as a reference to the power of within me, the power that I hold, and my ability to really change my life. So yeah, that was a really defining moment in my life.
Yeah, no kidding. to be able to remember it, well, we all have those moments, right, that we remember so very clearly, where we were, what we were doing, how it all happened, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to keep that part of you.
Yeah.
What do you tell others who are looking to kind of expand on that femininity, and that I'm going to really get to know myself?
It's really funny, because I guess the way other people see me, I don't see myself, you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm a strong woman. I do, but then looking back over my life, it's like, like I'm doing all right. So what I would tell other women is to really, you have all the answers, whenever I'm in doubt, I ask myself, like, it's okay to seek guidance, and of course, unloading the human experience, but don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in the stories. Don't get caught up in the mind games. And if you're starting to feel like life's crazy and your head's going all over the place, sink back in. And that's why I love to use the womb space as that center, because we can sink into the heart space as well. And so sinking into the heart and the womb space together is beautiful. But where you go like this, and you go down into your womb space and just sit there, you're taking your attention away from this like upper mind area. You know, when you consciously go down, you're getting grounded back into the earth. And so my advice would be that, like, you have all the answers within you. You know, every single person, not just women, we have all of the answers that we need. It's really just about finding the practices that work in order for us to get in contact with that part of ourselves, you know, and allowing that part of ourselves to lead the way fearlessly. And that's what it is. It's a practice. What happens sometimes on this path is that we go, oh my God, I've been leading from this person that isn't me, you know, with all these stories, all these beliefs, all of these habits that aren't me. And then you go, okay, what now? And that's why going back to the seat of observance throughout it all, and saying, I love to really create, if I go throughout my day, something happens and I didn't handle it the way that the real part of me would, I like to go back into that situation and change how I would have responded. And I think that's the best thing that any of us can do when we're really wanting to connect with our power, is looking at where we give out our power throughout our day by not speaking up when we should, by not saying what we mean, by just, when we don't follow our path and we let someone walk all over us. So what I love to do is, I've mentioned this before, is at the end of the day, go over your day and ask, how was I not myself today, and how can I be more of myself tomorrow? And you replay those situations, but only doing it differently. You respond differently, you stand in your power, and then what happens is when that situation comes along again, you respond differently, and therefore the situation doesn't keep coming back. So the more that you stand in your power and you really assert who you are and be unapologetic about it, like, you don't have to apologize for being a strong woman, you know, even though we've been conditioned that that's not a good thing to be, you know. So it's really about looking at where you're giving away your power and how you can take that back. Get back in power. Empowered.
Empowered, right?
Yeah.
Where we all deserve to come from.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you're also a mom, right? So how do you operate differently as a mother with this knowledge of your own cycle, of the womb space? I don't know anyone else who refers to it as the womb space, but like, I think that's so important. Like, language means something, right? And so it's not just like something to hide. This is something to really embrace. How does motherhood affect all of this for you?
So a kind of motherhood kind of kicked all of this off for me, my spiritual awakening, really, because I freaked out, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in charge of another human now, you know. And I was always adamant that I wasn't having children. I was just going to be that auntie, you know, and I was happy with that. But then she surprised us, and so here we are. But when it comes to, so what I do with her is I've actually been noting, I wouldn't say charting, but I've been noting her moon cycle already, because around new moon for her, she gets really tired, and her sleep is very interrupted, so she talks a lot in her sleep, but during new moon phase it's a lot more, and I noticed this probably 2 years ago, and so I started to note, and so now I can, and I think the beauty about that is, like, she doesn't know I'm doing this, but when she gets a little bit older and she starts to, you know, develop as a young woman, I'll be able to say to her, well, this is what I've noticed for your own moon cycle. Now here's the knowledge that I have, and you decide for yourself what that means. And I think that that's really important for mothers, is to remember that with young girls, what happens is when they bleed, on an energetic level, it's the end of their childhood, and it cuts off the energetic attachment, in the sense of they become their own independent energetic being. And when we as mothers hold on to the fact that they're still our little girl, and we don't acknowledge that they're actually now a woman and they want to be a sovereign woman in that regard, we cling on. And then when she's not responding to you like the little girl you've known for the last 12 years, it creates that knocking of heads, and you know, we all know what a rebellious teenage girl, we know the story, you know, it's like a rite of passage. But that's the thing, like when we talk about rite of passage, it's really important for young girls to be acknowledged when they step over that threshold, that childhood is now over, but not over in like childhood's over, that's it, you're a woman. It's like, let's acknowledge that, and now we teach you what we know about the realm that you're stepping into, and I'll be here, you know. And that's what I think is the most beautiful thing that I can do for my daughter, is just to let her know that I'll always be here for her and hand over the knowledge that I have. So I actually freaked out when I had to explain to her what periods were. I know this sounds so crazy because of the work that I do, but she's 5 and she really wanted to know why I wear a nappy. And so I built up the courage, right? And then one day I was just like, this is just what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, if I don't have a baby in my belly every month, I will bleed in order to make way for new eggs to grow. And, you know, explained it to her like that. And she didn't care. She was just like, oh yeah. So, you know, and that's the beauty of kids, is that they remind us to stop overthinking. It's really not as difficult as we make it out to be. But, you know, for all the mums out there that have young girls and they may be, you know, going, oh, what about their teenage years? I would say just start tracking with the moon and see how they are throughout the moon phases. And that will be a beautiful, and not only when she reaches that threshold of stepping over into womanhood, then she will see, oh, my mum really cares, you know? It's like, even though everything in my being is going, get away from me, mum, she's done this for me, you know? Yeah, so, I mean, motherhood is just one of those things that it still surprises me, for one, that I am a mother, and for two, that it just is always changing. She's always growing. As soon as I get a hold of an age where she's at, she changes again, and I'm just like, oh, always the student, always the teacher.
Yes, it's beautiful and scary all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I kind of want to just get into a little bit more about you. Take me through like your morning routine. What time do you wake up? How long does it take? Do you get yourself ready? Do you have to take your child to school? Like, what's that look like in the morning?
Well, you know, my morning routine varies a lot. And depending on where I am in my cycle as well, it'll vary again. Ideally, I've just started setting, so 444 has actually been my number for this year. And so I've actually started setting my alarm at 4:44 in the morning to get up. Yeah, I know.
On purpose. Okay, you're doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we all love synchronicities, right? And we love angel numbers. So I thought, well, why not start to set my alarms in angel numbers as a communication back to say, hey, I got you too. So, yeah, I like to do that. But look, it doesn't always work out like that, because I wake up and I go, oh, we're just coming out of winter as well. And where I live can be quite cold, like really cold. My husband goes to work at 7 in the morning. So I've got to get up early enough to have space to have my own time before I have to communicate with anything externally. And so I like to do breathing. I love to do Ujjayi breaths, 108 of those on a mala beads is really, really good to do. Yoga stretching, I love to do that as well. A little half-hour meditation, sometimes even only a 15-minute meditation, it depends. Drink lots of water. And I don't like to eat, I like intermittent fasting. So I like to have fruit before anything else, and I don't eat till after like 10 o'clock. But then my daughter gets up around 7:30. We get ready for school, 8:30. She goes off to school, and where I live is actually 40 minutes from the TP. So if I've got to come into work in here, then I've got to plan to be back for her to pick her up from school as well. So yeah, my morning routine totally varies though, to be honest. And it's still one of those things that I'm sculpting, you know, but as long as I take some time, and I think that's really important, is to actually take some time for yourself before you get into the day. No matter how short, it's really important to check in with yourself before everybody else needs. As a mum, we all know how hectic it can be. before we have to check in with everybody else, because by the time you get you time, you feel exhausted and you're like, where am I? You know, so checking in first thing in the morning is like super important.
And the flip side of that, what's your nighttime routine like? Do you have one?
Well, I mean, our daughter goes to bed at 7. And because my husband is helping me, like he's my business partner, so him and I usually have on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we usually have an hour of like business meeting at 7 from 7:30 to 8:30, and then I have a shower and usually go to bed because I'm working a lot throughout the day, and I've realized over the years how important sleep is. So if I can get to bed before 9 o'clock, that's really great. And I always like to do a meditation lying down in bed, half an hour to an hour. I don't really care if I go to sleep to it, as long as it's a high vibing one. Yeah, so that's what I do at nighttime.
That's beautiful. And especially since you go to get up so early, it's important for you to get to bed early, right?
Yeah, and like on Friday nights, we always have circle here at the TP. So my Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights really vary. And I catch up with my friends on the weekends. Like, you know, sometimes we go out for a dance. Like, yeah, Thursday, Friday, Saturday we always have circle on Friday. Other than that, it's like, yeah, so it's kind of like I've sculpted it to have half of the week where I'm quite serious and committed, you know, and the other half where I'm flowing. And I think that's the balance of the masculine and the feminine. You know what I mean? Is like I kind of balance that out there where I still give my feminine, because for me, like my wild feminine, is just does not like being restricted at all. So I really got to make space for her to do whatever she wants, whether that is nothing, but it's got to be on my own. You know, I've got to say when I do nothing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How do you make time for your relationship with your husband?
Well, you know, that's a big one, because he worked FIFO for 4.5 years. So he worked 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So he was only home 12 weeks a year for 4.5 years. And so, you know, only now can I say comfortably in the last month or two have we actually settled back in to have a normal relationship. We were so used to having a distant relationship where we communicated over the phone. So in person, it was really quite difficult for some time. But, you know, he loves the business side of things. And after reading the love languages and that book kind of like opened my eyes to how he accepts love, is you know, having business meetings, anyone would think is like, oh, that's not a really nice thing to do before bed, but he loves it. You know, that's for him, that's like his. And then for me, it's like our conversations that we have, like even like a conversation that we're having now, that really fills up my cup. So we've learned to become friends again, and put aside all of the you know, the being a mom and a dad and their work life and all of that. We've learned that that's not really important, that the most important part about our relationship is how we are with each other and communicating. So because we do live 40 minutes from the TP and I'm in town and out a lot, we don't get to spend a lot of time together. But when we do, I feel like it's very quality. Plus, we like to have a guilty binge on like The Walking Dead or Coven, or, you know, even watching Fails. That to us is, you know, that is, and I like to go out and have fun with him, with friends, once every couple of months. Because when we first met, we were party animals, and that part of you never leaves, you know. And so, but now we've just got to do it responsibly. We can't be going out every weekend. So every months we like to get a hotel room and go out with friends and dance and get dressed up together, and, you know. So yeah, I mean, our time together varies, but I think that as long as we're communicating, and communicating openly and not allowing, you know, I was reading something about, you know, expectations on how we want to change the people that we're with through our expectations, and that's just not accepting them for who they are. And that's been a really big thing for me, because on this spiritual journey, when you are a really spiritual person but your partner isn't quite as spiritual, it can be quite difficult, and you feel like they're not where at my level, they're not where I'm at. And that creates so much imbalance within your relationship. And then, you know, so I've just learned to just love and accept him for who he is and lead by example on that realm. And our relationship's amazing. So it's been a journey, but it's
That's
a good
amazing.
one.
What would you say is a secret key to your success that you wish everyone knew?
Trust. Trusting yourself. Trusting yourself that you have all the answers, trusting yourself that you are good enough, because I think a whole lot of beliefs fall under trust. When we have mistrust for ourselves, then we don't trust anything. And so I would say just trusting that this path that I'm being pulled on is the right path, you know, because I'm being pulled. It's like, so I'm like, and now I'm trusting that, and it's more of a guide, not a pull, you know? So I would definitely say trust.
Okay, so something that I like to ask my guests to do is teach us something. I didn't prepare you for this, so I apologize in advance. But is there something that you practice regularly? Maybe it's like a breathing exercise, or I don't know, something that you could teach fairly quickly. I'll do it along with you if it's something that I can do in the moment, or you know, if you're like, there's something you can teach us right now.
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking about morning routine, if you don't have the time, you know, let's not say if we don't have the time, if we haven't made the time for that time with ourselves, checking in easily and making sure that you're grounded and connected. This is a beautiful exercise that I like to do. So just close my eyes and then just imagine a beautiful light, infinite light above, streaming down all the way down over your body, through your body, clearing your channel down into the earth. And I like to say, I open to be a channel for divine love, light, and healing. And breathe. I open to be a channel for divine love, light, and healing. And, you know, 30 seconds of that in the morning, it's beautiful. And it's a way of really acknowledging that you're connected and you're grounded and you're guided.
It feels good too.
Oh yeah, and you imagine that light just clearing your channel and grounding you into the earth, knowing that you're connected above to your higher self it's a practice that I've been doing for months. And you can say that throughout your day, you know, and then at the end of the day, it's really nice to give gratitude. So thank you for using me as a channel for divine love, light, and healing. And that kind of acknowledges to me, it's kind of like I kind of shrink in the channel, because what I noticed when I first started doing this is that at the end of the night, if I wasn't closing down that stream, you don't get a very good sleep, you know. And a lot of people, if we don't practice switching off at the end of the day, we're constantly getting bombarded with guidance throughout our night, and we wake up exhausted. So that it's really important to make sure at the end of the day, and giving gratitude as well is like, it's so important, you know. So yeah, thanking your higher self for using you as a channel for divine love, light, and healing is a beautiful practice.
That is a beautiful practice. You're like turning yourself on and off at the beginning and end of the day. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, Nui, thank you so much for being here with me today. Where can people find you and the masterclass, the menstruation masterclass as well?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, Nui Louise, on Instagram, Nui Louise. You can also go on to nuilouise.com, and then you'll find the menstruation masterclass, and I've also got my oracle readings up there. So just type me in. There aren't many Nuis around, so you won't get lost. And you can just follow my website to find the menstruation masterclass and sign up. It starts on October 17th, so I'm so excited. So excited about that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be amazing.
Oh, it's life-changing. So thank you so much for having me, Dana.